Robert Rankin, Chatham, 1893. Constable William Lindsay, Comber, 1894. Constable Michael Toohey, London, 1898. Constable William Boyd, York County, 1901. Constable James Barron, Hamilton, 1903. Provincial Constable William Irving Jr., Webwood, 1904. Constable John Acton, Toronto, 1908. Constable Archibald Powell, Woodstock, 1907. High County Constable Alfred F. H. Campo, Essex County, 1912. Chief John A. McCarthy Jr., Stratford, 1913. Constable Matthew Hamilton, Stratford, 1913. Constable William Rourke, Coburg, 1915. Detective Frank A. Williams, Toronto, 1918. Sergeant Samuel J. Arnell, Kingston, 1919. Constable George Armstrong, Nipigon, 1919. County Constable Albert C. Springstead, Wentworth County, 1919. Chief Angus J. McClellan, Port Arthur, 1920. Constable Richard A. Beard, Napanee, 1921. Constable Reginald Pryor, Hamilton, 1921. County Constable William L. Pickard, Kent County, 1922. Constable William M. Holloway, Guelph, 1922. Constable John R. Smythe, Fort Erie OPP, 1922.
Constable Joseph Truman, Thorold, 1922. Constable Fred Lefebvre, North Bay, 1923. Sergeant John Urquhart, Cobalt OPP, 1923. Traffic Officer John E. Waddell, London, 1925. County Constable Évariste Laframboise, Essex County, 1925. Constable Frederick Rains, Hamilton, 1925. Temperance Act Inspector Thomas H. Constable, Cochrane, 1926. Constable Charles St. Charles, Madoc, 1926. Traffic Officer William O.K. McGillivray, Department of Highways, Toronto, 1927. Traffic Officer Lee Metcalf, Department of Highways, Grimsby, 1927. Traffic Officer Andrew McKay, Department of Highways, Newmarket, 1927. Traffic Officer Hiram O'Callaghan, Department of Highways, Kemptville, 1928. Constable Norman F. Maker, Peterborough OPP, 1928. County Constable Samuel J. Vanstone, Ontario County, 1928. Constable Albert E. Fisher, Toronto, 1928. Detective William R. Clark, Hamilton, 1929. Traffic Officer Miles Campbell, Department of Highways, Ottawa, 1929. Constable Thomas I. Kehoe, Bancroft, 1929. Traffic Officer Almer F. H. Wilson, Department of Highways, Leamington, 1929. Traffic Officer Fred Bingley, Department of Highways, Hagersville, 1929. Sergeant Thomas Kirk, York County, 1930. Constable James A. McNichol, Crowland Township, 1930. Constable Roy A. McQuillan, Toronto, 1930. Constable Blair C. Brown, Trenton, 1931. Constable John F. Montgomery, Westboro OPP, 1931. Constable Albert J. Nault, Sudbury, 1931. Chief John W. Burden, Strathroy, 1931. Constable Charles Heffron, Brampton OPP, 1932. Constable Daniel J. Cragg, Chesterville, 1932.
Constable Joseph de Ferrari, Toronto, 1932. Constable Russell Lemon, Kitchener OPP, 1934. Constable Colin C. McGregor, St. Thomas, 1934. Chief Thomas McCann, East York Township, 1934. Constable Edward McMaster, Toronto, 1935. Constable Edward Knox, Toronto, 1935. Constable George E. J. Lewis, Sarnia, 1936. Constable Orville E. Story, Owen Sound OPP, 1936. Constable Robert C. Malig, Canadian National Railway, 1937. Constable George E. Horan, Belleville RCMP, 1937. Sergeant Frederick Davidson, Sudbury, 1937. Constable David D. Beckett, Windsor, 1937. Constable Bartlett Smith, Stamford Center OPP, 1937. Constable Robert D. Eddington, Warren OPP, 1938. Constable Donald C. Sherville, Hamilton OPP, 1938. Detective James H. Watson, Toronto, 1938. Constable Elmer A. Shepard, Kirkland Lake OPP, 1939. Constable Frederick R. T. Blucher, Port Credit OPP, 1939. Constable Alfred J. Ferguson, Brockville OPP, 1940. Constable Harold H. Dent, Rockland OPP, 1940. Constable Donald L. Pickle, Mimico OPP, 1940. County Constable Harry Fordham, Elgin County, 1942. Constable John W. Scott, Toronto, 1942. Constable John Moyes, Peterborough, 1942. Chief Thomas Espy, Pembroke, 1943. Constable Charles F. Hayner, Toronto, 1943. Constable George R. Vanderveer, Sarnia, 1944. Constable Robert W. Duncan, Bowmanville OPP, 1945. Detective Thomas Stoneman, Ottawa, 1945.
Constable Robert A. Wright, Toronto, 1945. Constable Francis A. Graham, Windsor, 1947. Constable Douglas Reynolds, Chatham, 1947. Constable Merritt C. Gray, Kingston, 1948. Constable George Ewell, Brampton OPP, 1948. Constable James B. Henderson, Kingston RCMP, 1948. Constable Reginald G. Morden, Little Current OPP, 1949. Constable Edward Terrell, Sudbury, 1949. Constable Jerry Dalt, Sudbury, 1949. Constable John Ferguson, Exeter OPP, 1949. Constable Cecil Holden, Toronto, 1950. Constable Frank Hare, Port Dover, 1951. Sergeant Joseph R. Battersby, Toronto, 1951. Constable Millard A. Brennan, Kingston, 1951. County Constable Mount A. Wood, Lennox and Addington County, 1951. Sergeant of Detectives Edmund Tong, Toronto, 1952. Detective Sergeant James Priest, Toronto, 1952. Corporal Harold T. Shaughnessy, Port Colborne OPP, 1953. Corporal Henry Gilchrist, Tilsonburg OPP, 1954. Constable Kenneth Lennon, Etobicoke Township, 1954. Constable George Constantino, Ottawa, 1954. Constable Ernest Paul, Copper Cliff, 1955. Constable John A.C. Behan, Perth OPP, 1956. Constable Louis R. Durant, Markham Township, 1956. Sergeant Claire J. McGillan, Peterborough 1957. Constable Philip H. Delarue, Matheson OPP, 1957. Constable Peter R. Saborn, Kenora OPP, 1957. Constable Henry J. Harper, Gananoque OPP, 1957. Constable Ronald Pitt, Morrisburg, 1957.
Constable George W. Smith, Windsor, 1957. Corporal Herbert M. Smart, Toronto RCMP, 1958. Constable Maurice Melnichek, Toronto RCMP, 1958. Constable George H. E. Ransom, Aurelia RCMP, 1958. Constable Glenn F. Farrow, Aurelia RCMP, 1958. Constable David M. Perry, Aurelia RCMP, 1958. Constable Willis J. Jacob, Barry OPP, 1958. Constable Calvin R. Fulford, Ear Falls OPP, 1958. Constable John B. Perkins, Metropolitan Toronto, 1959. Constable Edward R. Wickens, Aurelia OPP, 1960. Constable Theodore D. Christensen, Metropolitan OPP, Toronto, 1961. Constable Dennis J. Winstanley, Stamford Township, 1962. Constable Frederick J. Nash, Metropolitan Toronto, 1962. Corporal James S. McDonald, Pembroke OPP, 1962. Constable David R. Gregory, Hamilton, 1962. Constable Thomas J. Black, Woodstock, 1962. Constable Harley Highland, Sandwich East Township, 1963. Constable Jeffrey Armstrong, Ottawa, 1963. Constable Arthur T. Truman, Metropolitan Toronto, 1963. Constable Patrick C. Armstrong, Powassan OPP, 1963. Detective Kenneth J. Evans, Metropolitan Toronto, 1963. Detective Sergeant John H. Bassett, Metropolitan Toronto, 1963. Constable Walter E. McCauley, Guelph, 1964. Constable Alexander M. Prodan, Dutton OPP, 1964. Sergeant Laurier C. Quesnel, Sudbury, 1965. Constable Ronald F. Webster, Toronto Township, 1966. Constable John R. Mackey, Rockcliffe OPP, 1966. Constable Edward G. Holdsworth, Whitchurch Township, 1966. Constable Thomas J. Emery, Downsview OPP, 1966.
Constable James I. Hamilton, Listowel OPP, 1967. Chief Retired Cully F. Rocher, Listowel, 1967. Constable Gerald F. Mills, Whitchurch Township, 1968. Constable Peter J. Kirk, Hawkesbury OPP, 1968. Constable Samuel E. Ankenman, Sebringville OPP, 1968. Constable Bradford E. Brown, Sudbury OPP, 1968. Detective Sergeant Lauren J. Chapatis, Peterborough OPP, 1968. Corporal James Smith, Peterborough OPP, 1968. Sergeant John C. McMurrich, Hamilton, 1968. Constable Robert C. Carrick, Sandwich West Township, 1969. Constable David Goldsworthy, Metropolitan Toronto, 1969. Sergeant David Tuckey, Ottawa, 1970. Constable William R. Rogers, Petrolia OPP, 1970. Constable Stephen H. Schultz, Brantford OPP, 1970. Constable Mark L. Holden, Trenton, 1970. Constable John C. A. Verrell, Oakville OPP, 1971. Constable Donald H. Lewis, Metropolitan Toronto, 1972. Detective Douglas T. Sinclair, Metropolitan Toronto, 1972. Detective Michael Irwin, Metropolitan Toronto, 1972. Constable Claire L. Lackey, Little Current OPP, 1972. Constable James Lothian, Metropolitan Toronto, 1973. Constable Leslie Maitland, Metropolitan Toronto, 1973. Detective Thomas B. Cooper, Kingston, 1973. Constable Leonard G. Slater, North Bay, 1973. Constable Vaughn B. McKay, Sudbury OPP, 1973. Corporal Evan V. Gilmore, Spanish OPP, 1973. Constable Luciano De Simone, Niagara Regional, 1974. Constable Gerald A. Thompson, Kemptville OPP, 1975. Constable Maurice R. J. Chatterson, Forest OPP, 1975.
Constable Gary V. McDonald, Forest OPP, 1975. Detective Ronald G. Sproul, Peel Regional, 1975. Constable Lee E. Wilson, Metropolitan Toronto, 1975. Corporal Donald R. Irwin, Kitchener OPP, 1976. Corporal Ronald E. Lee, Dowling OPP, 1976. Constable Paul G. Gosling, Metropolitan Toronto, 1976. Constable David C. Kirkwood, Ottawa, 1977. Sergeant Ronald E. McKean, Collingwood, 1977. Constable John S. Kuzner, Thunder Bay, 1978. Constable William I. Seward, Toronto RCMP, 1978. Constable James L. Begbie, Trenton, 1978. Constable John Lau, Kingston, 1978. Constable Henry Snedden, Metropolitan Toronto, 1978. Constable Paul E. Patterson, Oak Ridges OPP, 1978. Constable Duncan T. McAleese, Simcoe OPP, 1980. Constable George H. Bennett, Aurelia OPP, 1980. Constable Michael W. Sweet, Metropolitan Toronto, 1980. Constable Thomas Hicks, Sudbury OPP, 1980. Constable William F. Shores, Dutton OPP, 1980. Constable Richard M. Verdecchia, Huntsville OPP, 1981. Constable Kenneth M. Sweat, Ottawa, 1981. Constable Percival B. Cummins, Metropolitan Toronto, 1981. Constable Barry F. McKinnon, Hamilton RCMP, 1981. Constable William H. Smith, North Bay OPP, 1982. Detective Inspector Lauren I. Foran, Toronto OPP, 1982. Constable Richard J. C. Hopkins, Mount Forest OPP, 1982. Detective William T. Hawkins, Peel Regional, 1982. Constable Volker H. Shaja, Peel Regional, 1982. Constable Russell O'Connor, Ottawa, 1983.
Constable Bruce K. Crew, Goderich OPP, 1983. Constable David W. Utman, Nepean, 1983. Corporal William F. McIntyre, Toronto OPP, 1984. Constable Douglas F. Tribling, York Regional, 1984. Constable Dwayne B. Pucala, Peel Regional, 1984. Constable David A. Dunmore, Metropolitan Toronto, 1984. Constable William J. Grant, York Regional, 1984. Constable John G. Ross, Woodstock OPP, 1984. Constable Vernon L. Miller, Matheson OPP, 1984. Constable Richard J. McLaughlin, Spanish OPP, 1985. Constable Donald C. Campbell, Kincardine OPP, 1985. Constable Mario J. E. Tessier, Ottawa OPP, Ottawa RCMP, 1985. Constable Randall F. Skidmore, Cobeconk OPP, 1986. Corporal Maurice R. Levoy, Little Current OPP, 1986. Constable Stephen J. Peasel, Niagara Regional, 1988. Constable Hugh G. M. Lynn, Metropolitan Toronto, 1988. Constable John R. Grigofsky, Niagara Falls OPP, 1989. Constable Thomas J. Cooper, Grassy Narrows OPP, 1991. Constable Brian J. Hutchinson, Ottawa RCMP, 1991. Constable Scott W. D. Rossiter, Ingersoll, 1991. Constable Andrew B. Gordon, Madoc, 1992. Constable Jeffrey Paolozzi, Niagara Regional, 1993. Constable Richard E. Neisdet, Minden OPP, 1993. Constable Joseph J. McDonald, Sudbury Regional, 1993. Constable Jean A. Deforge, Castleman OPP, 1993. Constable Richard M. Jean, Castleman OPP. Constable Albert S. Taylor, Neketchewinin, First Nations, 1993. Constable Todd E. Bayliss, Metropolitan Toronto, 1994. Constable John W. Knight, Metropolitan Toronto, 1994.
Constable Kenneth Y. Roy, South Porcupine OPP, 1995. Constable Michael W. Gula, Niagara Falls OPP, 1996. Constable Thomas P. Coffin, Midland OPP, 1997. Detective Constable William D. J. Hancox, Toronto, 1998. Constable David R. Nicholson, Waterloo Regional, 1998. Detective Constable Keith A. Badger, Caledon OPP, 1998. Sergeant Richard T. McDonald, Sudbury Regional, 1999. Constable Charles Mercier, Niagara Falls OPP, 1999. Constable James C. McFadden, Chatham, Kent OPP, 1999. Sergeant Margaret J. Eve, Chatham, Kent OPP, 2000. Constable Laura J. Ellis, Toronto, 2002. Constable Paul Newdert, Walpole Island First Nation, 2002. Constable Alan Kuzmich, South Simcoe, 2002. Constable Philip R. Shrive, Renfrew OPP, 2003. Constable John P. Flagg, Kingston OPP, 2003. Constable Christopher Garrett, Coburg, 2004. Constable Tyler L. Boutillier, Grenville OPP, 2004. Constable Michael J. A. Sydock, Port Credit OPP, 2004. Constable Andrew J. Potts, Bracebridge OPP, 2005. Corporal Matthew D. J. Dinning, 2 Military Police Regiment CFB, Petawawa, 2006. Constable John C. Atkinson, Windsor, 2006. Constable Donald J. Y. Doucette, Sault Ste. Marie, 2006. Constable David Mounsey, Huron OPP, 2006. Constable Robert J. Plunkett, York Regional, 2007. Constable Alan Hack, Elgin OPP, 2009. Constable Eric Zapnick, Ottawa, 2009. Chief Superintendent Douglas E. Coates, Ottawa RCMP, 2010. Constable James Ochakowski, Peel Regional, 2010. Constable Vu D. Pham, Huron OPP, 2010.
Sergeant Ryan Russell, Toronto, 2011. Constable Garrett Stiles, York Regional, 2011. Constable Jennifer A. Kovach, Guelph, 2013. Constable John Zivich, Toronto, 2013. Constable Joseph B. Previtt, Thunder Bay, 2014.
Colors on the roll. Line right. Easy. Punch.
Sorry.
Welcome to the 19th Annual Ontario Police Memorial Foundation Ceremony of Remembrance. I'm Deborah Hutchison from Rogers TV, and joining me is Mr. Doug Allen. Doug is from the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation. Welcome, Doug.
Good morning. How are you, Deborah?
Good morning. I'm good. We're here today at Queen's Park to pay tribute to the 266 police officers in Ontario who have fallen in the line of duty. Tell me a bit about the ceremony, Doug.
The ceremony today is held every first Sunday in May of every year as a ceremony of remembrance for police officers who have given their lives in the line of duty in the province of Ontario. The ceremony starts off with two brand new recruit officers, which today was Ryan Tresillo from the York Regional Police Service and recruit Samantha Mayhew from the Durham Regional Police Service, reading all 266 officers' names that are on the memorial wall today. The ceremony was started in May 7th, 2000, where the memorial was dedicated at that time, and the ceremonies have continued every year since.
How far back do the names on the wall go?
The earliest we found is in 1904. John Fisk was an officer that was a high constable in the city of Toronto, and he was taking a prisoner on a sailboat, the HMS Speedy, to Newcastle for his trial. Aboard the ship was the prosecutor and the judge, and it was unfortunately lost at sea during a storm. And he was the first officer that we're aware of to give his life in the line of duty.
Now, the memorial itself has two statues. Tell me a bit about that.
The two statues are 2.5 meter tall bronze statues. The male officer, which you can see behind us, is dressed in a traditional uniform that officers wore between 1950 and 1990. And the female officer pictured in the statue is dressed in modern day police dress.
You know, Doug, the ceremony and memorial today is not only about recognizing and paying tribute to the fallen officers, it's also about honoring their families. Joining us now is Erin Ochakowski. Her husband, Constable Artem James Ochakowski, was a Peel Regional Police officer who in March of 2010 was killed in the line of duty in a two-vehicle collision. Erin, thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us what this memorial means for you and your son, Owen.
It just, when James was killed, I felt very alone. Owen was 3, and I had to go home and tell him that his dad and his hero were never going to come home again. And I was told by the police department, by Peel, that we would never be alone and that they would always have our back. And so do all the other police departments. So this memorial means that for us. It's proving that James will never be forgotten, and that Owen and I will never be forgotten also.
Now, in the ceremony today, you will be presenting the wreath on behalf of the families of fallen officers. That's 8 years after James' passing. Why is this so important today for you?
I think it's, we don't, thank goodness, we don't have any new names going on the wall, but to be able to represent the rest of the families, it's an honor to me to lay the wreath in honor of all of them and all of the names on the wall.
Because when James passed away, you were here, but you didn't get to place a wreath, you were saying.
No, we were able to walk up as a group. There were a few names going on the wall that year, unfortunately. So we all walked up as a group and honored and represented the names. But this is the first year that, since we don't have any names going on the wall and honored families, that we've been asked to lay the wreath in honor of all the families and the fallen names on the wall.
May that tradition continue, and wouldn't it be nice if it would be family members laying
Fabulous.
the wreath, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It would be. Now, do you get together with other wives or spouses of fallen officers in the province? Do you have some sort of group that gets together and talk to each other about issues that arise?
We do. When James was killed, we didn't have a support system set in Canada. So I, and along with some other people, started SOUL, so it's Survivors of Law Enforcement Canada. And it's an organization where we can get together and interact, support each other. We can advocate together for survivors' rights. We have had many people generously donate to our organization so we can help with different things with different survivors. We've found out recently that there are some survivors that get their benefits cut a bit after their spouse was fallen in the line of duty. So helping them with mental health issues and things like that is something that SOUL helps and is providing.
Now, the motto is heroes in life, not in death. What does that mean to you and your family?
James was a hero every day that he went out. He chose that profession to go out and serve his public. He didn't choose to die, and it doesn't matter how they died. They lived as heroes, and that to me is what heroes in life, not death means. That they're not heroes because they died, they're heroes because of what they did, and every other officer out there is a hero as well.
Aaron, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All the
Thank you,
best.
Aaron.
This year, there will be 2 names being added to the Wall of Honor. As Aaron mentioned, not officers that fell in the line of duty this year. They are officers from the past, but their stories are no less heroic than if they had given their lives today. The names of the 2 officers are Constable John Robert Smythe and Highway Traffic Officer Almer Frederick Hamilton Wilson. Rather refreshing that we don't have,
Yes.
although you
Oh.
were saying this is the
It's-
second year in a row, correct?
Yes, it's great the way things have evolved in policing. I mean, we've still had some serious accidents over the past year, where things have gone wrong and officers have been injured. But I think with the province of Ontario, with policing, both police service boards, chiefs, the associations have all got together over the past 20 years and have said, let's get serious with safety. We see improvements in the body protection we wear, the safety equipment, the use of force protection that we wear. The vehicles themselves have reflective decals all over them, so nighttime visibility. They also have lights. When you come down the highway now or through a city street, you recognize that as a police vehicle from a long ways away. And that is all, I feel, helped, along with a lot of luck, of keeping our officers safe. One of the other things that we used was the information we have in the cars now with the computers. When we're going to a house, we'll know as officers if the police have been to that house, who resides at that house, if there has been problems in the past of that house. So we're very much prepared as compared to when I started in the 70s, where we really didn't have that information going to the residents. And sometimes you ran into people that you weren't expecting, and sometimes you didn't have the backup you needed. We've also, there's been the training this year that occurs in each year is what they call block training. It goes through use of force training, new laws, everything else, and every officer in the province takes that block training. And I hope that it works out. So,
Okay.
but
So we have, we've gone from it being very quiet around here to, in a very short amount of time, a lot of people arriving, marching bands now.
marching bands. Now this event is put on by the Police Memorial Foundation, and the Police Memorial Foundation is consisted of the Ontario, Toronto, and OPP associations, plus the Senior Officers and the Chiefs Association, and they have one special person that looks after all the history of the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation, and that's retired Sergeant Dave Brown.
Who just happens to be here with
Who just
us
happens
today.
to be here with us.
welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
David,
So-
nice to meet you.
Easy, Doug. Just broke the finger.
Okay.
So we were talking about our two officers
Yes.
this year, the two historical cases. The first one, Constable Smythe. Tell me a bit about his story.
Well, John Smythe had immigrated from Ireland after the First World War. He was in the Irish Guard. He was quite a hero. He was wounded a number of times. Immigrated to Canada and joined the Ontario Provincial Police, newly formed in 1909. So his seniority was quite high in the OPP. His badge number was only 37. So considering the OPP was quite young at the time, he was.
We're just having a bit of mic problems here.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
His seniority was rather high. He was posted to Fort Erie, Ontario, on the U.S. border, and became very active in enforcing the Ontario Temperance Act down there. So during the Prohibition times, chasing down rum runners from the American side and the Canadian side, he got very good at it.
Yeah, the circumstances surrounding his death, a little suspicious?
Yes, you could say that even in today. It's very suspicious. An accident. He and an officer from the Customs were going to Port Colborne to do a liquor raid. And he was driving the vehicle that was owned by Constable Muir from Customs and hit some gravel, loose gravel. And the vehicle spun out of control, rolled over. Luckily, Officer Muir was not injured. He went over to the overturned car and pulled Constable Smythe out from under the vehicle, and his vital signs absent right away. No clear indication of injuries. He was rushed to hospital immediately, but was pronounced at the hospital. He was quite, as I said before, very good at enforcing the Temperance Act. He had received numerous threats on both sides of the border from New York State and Ontario because rum running was quite lucrative, and he was interfering with the bootleggers' money flow. So the commissioner of the day sent down the head of Criminal Investigations Bureau from Toronto here down to oversee the investigation because the autopsy did not determine any cause of death. There was no injuries to his body, so there was tests conducted back in the labs back here in Toronto, and the coroner at the end of the day with the coroner's jury, they ended up with determining he died of shock. Suspicious, yes, but you have to go with the medical information, the science of the time, and that's what they determined was his cause of death. So clearly,
Somewhat typical for the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, very much so.
What about our second officer, who is Provincial Highway Traffic Officer Almer Frederick Hamilton Wilson? What can you tell us about him?
Well, he's actually born in the U.S., Canadian parents. His father passed away when he was quite young. Mother came back and remarried. He was adopted by his new father, David Wilson. His birth name is actually Hamilton. That's why in his name he carries Hamilton and Wilson. Only child. He had been married twice. He had only joined the Provincial Traffic Enforcement Department in June of that year. So he wasn't long. He'd been from Toronto, and he was sent to Leamington, and he was by himself. His wife hadn't even moved. And he was driving a motorcycle, brand new motorcycle. The rear tire blew, sent him out of control, and bad timing, vehicle coming the opposite direction. He was thrown into the vehicle, landed on the hood, hit his head on the driver's door, and then thrown onto the asphalt. Back in the 20s, no helmets. And he was concussed and severe head trauma to him from hitting the vehicle in the highway.
Dave, how do you come across the historicals? I mean, this one occurred in 1922. How do you come across this information, and how do you investigate it?
Well, sometimes we get information through our website from family members inquiring. Myself and a few other officers, the actual Deputy Chief of Smith Falls is another history buff, and he likes to do this. So when he finds somebody, he sends it to me, and then I do the background investigation. So do a lot of research through Ancestry, searching archives. In the beginning years, in 2000 when we unveiled this, the archives was just 2 blocks away from here. And I used to go in, because there wasn't internet then, I had to go in, and every time I walked into the archives, the ladies that worked there would say, "Not another officer." And they were so great to us, helping us out, finding the information. Now a lot of it can be done online. Some of it can't be. We actually have to physically go. Rely heavily on old newspapers, the stories of the day. We get copies of the old newspapers, obituaries, and then I do family research trees to find family. And quite lately, we've been very successful in finding historic family members. Unfortunately, Smythe didn't have any family here. Wilson located family down in the U.S., but unfortunately they couldn't attend today. It's just too far away for them.
Great.
Okay.
That is very good, Dave. Well, on behalf of Deborah and myself.
Thanks for joining us. I know you've got a lot of work to do still to come.
Thank you very much.
And I won't shake your hand this time.
Thank you. We'll talk.
Take care.
Thank you, Dave. Well, you know, regardless of the cause, honoring these historical officers reminds us all of how officers today put themselves in danger and dangerous situations every single shift while in the line of duty, Doug.
Yes, it is a job that police do. It's a very sometimes mundane job, going from different things and doing your paperwork and all the rest, but then all of a sudden, like what happened the other day on Yonge Street in the middle of the day, it goes from 0 to 100 miles an hour, where you have to start, catch up, go, be ready to go, be ready to act, and be ready to do the proper things, and make sure that people are protected and yourself is protected, and keep the peace, certainly in the community. And it's a difficult job that way, but as officers get some seniority and seasoning, they're able to sense what's going on. And again, with today's technology, we have lots of information that's at our fingertips that we can find out about people, find out what's going on. Our communication system's gotten a lot better. They get a lot more information now. People are willing to call in because the eyes of the community and the information they forward to the police is very important in the police response. And certainly that helps with policing and keeping people safe.
Now, that incident you were referring to, Monday, April the 23rd, 10 people lost their lives and another 16 were injured in that senseless attack in Toronto on the streets. In addition to all the good Samaritans that called 911 and came to the aid of all the victims, one Toronto police officer has been heralded a hero for his not only professionalism but for his calm approach in dealing with the attacker who drove the van up on the sidewalk right into all these people.
Now, this officer here is definitely a hero, no offense or but he went to a situation. He looked at it with his training. He addressed the problem. He found the driver of the van. He went and identified. He knew that it was the driver, and he went about making one of the biggest arrests on scene that any Ontario police officer in Canada has ever made. But he followed his training. He did what his instincts told him to do, and he was successful. He was safe. He was able to apprehend a major criminal and keep the public safe from any further occurrence.
But he did it also with a million eyes on him and social media rolling and recording. There was someone like 10 feet away with their phones rolling and recording. I just have to ask you these days, when you're under the constant scrutiny and at any moment your actions can be recorded, how does that play into how you approach a situation and in the
a
training.
serious situation like that, you're focused on what's going on right away. So you shut everything out. You're focused on what you're doing and what you have to do to successfully bring this event for the conclusion to the event, keeping the officer safe, stopping the criminal, and everything else you shut out around until everything's done, and then you look up and you see everything afterwards. It's really you focus in and you seem to forget about everything around you. And that's the way you have to do it to keep yourself safe. You can't have those other ideas in your head while you're trying to do a high takedown like that officer did.
There is protocol, though, for after. What happens now to this officer?
Basically, we have a system where officers can seek assistance in getting help with post-traumatic stress.
Right.
Post-traumatic stress is an injury to a person's emotions. So it's harder to deal with than a cut on your hand, broken arm. Cut on your hand, you put a Band-Aid on it, you may stitch it. Broken arm, you can splint it or cast it. With the emotions in your mind, you can't see it. Some people everybody reacts differently to it. Some people have symptoms right away, which are perfectly normal symptoms, to an abnormal situation. It's a normal emotion that you've never experienced because of an abnormal situation. Some people are able to deal with it. It's very important to get it addressed right at the start. Proper exercise, proper counseling, getting back into the workforce, not excluded from the members. And it's a healing process, and that's the start of the healing process, and it will help officers. Sometimes when you get into the post-traumatic stress, you find officers who haven't dealt with post-traumatic stress. 10 years later, will start into behaviors that are totally against misbehaviors that are totally against the officer's norm. And we'll find out later that it's because there's a post-traumatic stress injury, and he really hasn't, or she hasn't really addressed it.
Really dealt with it. We have quite the crowd now, a very solemn crowd here today for this ceremony. Officers from how far away, Doug?
There's officers here right across the province. There will be RCMP here as well. There's the brass band from Kitchener-Waterloo Police Service, the Mass Police Pipe and Drum Band, and directly behind us we have the Ontario Police Chorus, which is made up of choruses from throughout the province. Each individual force sends their chorus down here, and they are they're mass chorus, and they do provide nice music for the ceremony. We'll see an officer from New York lay the wreath today on behalf of U.S. officers, and we have quite a variety of people. We even have, I was talking to the University Police, they even send people over from across the street at the Toronto University, and I thought that was very nice that they do that. But we'll also have Border Customs and Border Security, Canadian Customs, and some people from the Ontario Correctional Institute.
Now, as we mentioned, the motto is Heroes in Life, Not Death. That is on the pin that you were wearing. Can you talk to us about this memorial pin?
Well, the Heroes in Life, Not Death is a statement that the officer Dave Nicholson's wife made, Wendy is her name, made after David's funeral. She said her husband was a hero while he lived, but he wasn't a hero in death. You know, he was known for what he did, and unfortunately had died from it. The police memorial executive was so moved by that statement, they made it part of their own. And they developed a pin, which was a rectangle pin replicating the wall of the police memorial. It has an Ontario badge on the one side, and I call it an Ontario badge because it's a police badge with a trillium inside. Now, they're pewter, but for the families, the trillium on the pin is shaded with white. So if you see someone with the Heroes in Life, Not Death pin with a white trillium, and Aaron had one on, it'll have the white trillium in it.
It's
And
a pin you
that's-
never want to have.
Pardon me?
It's a pin you never want to have.
No, it's not a pin you want to have, and it's, as you can see by talking to them, it's quite a traumatic
Yes.
thing to go through, and it's not the pin you want to have, but it does show a remembrance, respect for what they did and what they did for the province of Ontario by giving their life.
We are close to the beginning of the ceremony. Let's take a look now at what's going on in front of us.
Colors to the carry. Shoulder ups.
Always the last to arrive. And she's now shaking hands with the president of the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation, Ronnie Craig, and him and Mr. Larry Wood is now escorting her to her seat at the memorial.
Remain standing for the arrival of Her Honor Elizabeth Dodwell, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario.
Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell now arriving to the 19th Annual Ontario Police Memorial Foundation Ceremony of Remembrance. Doug, the name of every single fallen officer has been spoken during the reading of the honor roll this morning.
Yes. And it's done by the recruits that the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation picks from the Ontario Police College with their assistants. And it's a way of an act of remembrance for each and every officer that is listed on the wall. The granite walls, the 8 granite walls, 4 on each side of the statue.
Nice regal salute.
That it's a permanent
Present.
remembrance of these officers who have given their lives.
The Ontario Police Memorial Ceremony of Remembrance.
Shoulder ups.
The Ontario Police Memorial Ceremony of Remembrance is called to order. Your Honor, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the singing of the national anthems of Canada and the United States.
General salute. Present ups.
I would ask Rabbi Ronald Weiss of the Toronto Police Service to deliver the opening prayer.
Almighty God, we are gathered here this morning to pay homage to our fellow officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the performance of their duty. We stand here today in humility, but united as one, to express our admiration and respect for their dedication and their courage in the line of fire. We shall forever be grateful for their selflessness and determination in enforcing the law so that all members of society can live freely, with confidence and in safety. From the depths of our heart, O Lord, we seek your guidance as we move forward. Grant peace, freedom, grant wisdom and fortitude to our leaders, Chief Saunders and our deputies, strength and courage to everyone on the front line, and perseverance and commitment to all people attached to our police services. In recognition of our fallen fellow officers, and with their sacred memories before us, we ask, O Lord, that you inspire us to continue to toil unceasingly to maintain peace and security throughout our land. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Your Honor, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Dan Ross. I was a member of the Toronto Police Service for over 38 years and was fortunate enough to retire earlier this year. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to serve as your Master of Ceremonies. Once again, in this, our 19th year, we carry on the tradition of honoring our heroes in life. This year, we add the names of 2 more of our fallen comrades to the memorial. I thank you, one and all, for being present here today at the ceremony of remembrance. The memorial site forever stands as a symbol of our respect and gratitude for the service and ultimate sacrifice of 266 of our fallen colleagues. I would now like to introduce the President of the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation, Mr. Rondi Craig.
Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome the family and friends of our heroes. Our thoughts and our hearts are always with you, and not just today, but every day. To the men and women from the law enforcement community from across the province and from abroad, your presence here is applauded and it's respected, and it's inspiring to see you all here today. Your Honor, Premier, Minister, distinguished guests, good morning, and thank you for your commitment and support to the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation, I am honored and privileged to stand before you today as the President of the OPMF and to welcome you to our 19th Annual Ceremony of Remembrance. Thank you to our new Vice President, Larry Wood, and our newest board member, Thomas Kadelka of the OPP. Thank you to Dan Ross for agreeing to take on the role of Master of Ceremonies this morning. Dan is a well-respected officer. He served on our association and, as you heard, has recently retired. To all the volunteers who assist in ensuring that this ceremony is a dignified tribute to our fallen heroes, thank you. Thank you to Rogers TV, who will be broadcasting this ceremony for their 12th year. And I recognize that even during their corporate restructuring and transition, your commitment to this event remains steadfast. So on behalf of those who are unable to join us here today, your coverage of this event allows people to be a part of a celebration of heroes. The goal and focus of our foundation has never wavered, and that is to ensure that no fallen officer is ever forgotten. 266 names engraved on the granite wall behind me, names of true heroes, heroes that paid the ultimate sacrifice in their pursuit of justice and their desire to make a difference. Honoring and respecting their sacrifice and the sacrifice of their families is as important today as it was the day they lost their lives. In recent days in this city, we have seen evil, and in response, the world caught a glimpse of the amazing work that police do throughout the province every day. We don't run away from danger, we chase it down, and we deal with it. In the face of tragedy, we don't cower, we rise to the occasion in order to protect and save lives. Calm, compassionate, professional. These are just some of the attributes that were observed during an unprecedented, horrific event. And these are the very same attributes that capture the people whose names appear on the wall behind me. The world is a better place because these heroes were a part of it. This year, we add the following two names to our honor roll, both from our historical past. First, Constable John Robert Smythe, Fort Erie, Ontario Provincial Police, December 9th, 1922. On December 9th, 1922, Constable John Smythe and Canada Customs Officer Charles Muir were on their way to Port Colborne from Fort Erie to conduct a liquor seizure. The car lost control on loose gravel and barrel rolled twice. Officer Muir was not injured in the accident, but Constable Smythe, who was driving, was found deceased underneath the overturned vehicle. He was known to lawbreakers on both sides of the border as a result of his diligence in enforcing the Temperance Act. And because he believed that he had received threatened letters from New York State and Ontario, Constable Smythe's death was investigated by a Criminal Investigations Bureau inspector from the OPP. Born in Belfast, Ireland, he served in the Irish Guards in World War I, where he had been wounded 4 times. Following the war, he immigrated to Canada. John Smythe was 28 years of age and single at the time of his death. He had been with the Ontario Provincial Police for 2 years. Second, Traffic Officer Elmer Frederick Hamilton Wilson, Department of Highways, Leamington, August 26, 1929. Traffic Officer Wilson was on patrol on Highway 3 near the village of Maidstone when the rear tire of his new Department of Highways motorcycle blew out, causing the bike to cross into the oncoming path of a car. Officer Wilson was thrown from the bike, striking his head into the side of the car, then was thrown onto the pavement, striking his head on the roadway. 2 doctors who were traveling on the same road came to his immediate aid, and he was transported to hospital in Windsor, where he unfortunately passed away from his injuries. He was born in South Bend, Indiana, in the States, and immigrated to Canada as a child with his parents. Elmer Wilson had been with the Provincial Highway Traffic Department for 2.5 months. He was married with no children. He was 27 years old at the time of his death. Now let me take a moment to recognize the 133 officers from the United States who have been killed in the line of duty since we gathered 1 year ago. Our thoughts and prayers are with you and with your families. We stand here together right now, united and strong, in order to honor John and Elmer and all of our fallen heroes and their families and the friends they left behind. Use this strength as we move forward. Let the names on this wall be imprinted forever in your mind and in your heart, so that we always honor our brothers and sisters who paid the ultimate sacrifice as they served and protected their respective communities. God bless the men and women of law enforcement throughout this province, from its smallest hamlet to its largest city. Please take care of each other, take care of yourselves, so that we can continue to honorably and with pride serve the fine citizens of this amazing province. We will always honor, we will never forget our heroes in life, not death. Thank you.
Thank you, Rondi. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I introduce the Honorable Elizabeth Dodswell, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario.
Mr. Craig, Premier Wynne, Minister Lalonde, distinguished guests, family, and friends who grieve the fallen. Mes chers amis, good morning, bonjour, bonjour. As we come together today in remembrance, let us acknowledge that we gather on the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples dating back countless generations. Please join me in paying respect to their contributions and in recognizing the role of treaty making in what is currently Ontario. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they are, of course, still relevant today. It is my solemn privilege to stand alongside Ontario's police officers in solidarity as we pay tribute to your fallen colleagues. I welcome officers participating today from outside this city, this province, and beyond, families who love and support those who serve, and I acknowledge members of the public who are here to pay their respects. It is indeed fortunate that in 2017 in Ontario, no police officers died in the line of duty. However, let us always be mindful of those in uniform who sustain injuries, both visible and invisible. Society requires so much from the officers who serve and protect us, and our thoughts are with those who have also been wounded. I commend those who assisted in their recovery. Today, as you've just heard, we honor the lives of two officers who in decades past gave their lives in the line of duty. Their names are Constable John Robert Smythe of Fort Erie, who died in 1922, and Highway Traffic Officer Elmer Frederick Hamilton Wilson of Leamington, who died in 1929. Interestingly, both officers were immigrants to Canada. Constable Smythe from Belfast and Officer Wilson from the United States. And both lost their lives while on the road, traveling in order to serve their adopted country. They made the ultimate sacrifice to preserve our safety. And today we solemnly promise that their bravery and diligence shall never be forgotten. Our respect for their memory is part of the foundation on which our modern province rests. The members of our police forces, past and present, inspire us, and their achievements, courage, and relentless hard work are deserving of wide recognition. Last September in Waterloo, I was very surprised when a man came up to me following an event and lamented that his grandson wanted to be just a policeman when he grew up. I was pleased to respond that the extraordinary talents and expertise required to do the job of policing today mean that nobody is just a policeman. Liaison officers have learned a diversity of languages and customs to serve their communities. Forensic specialists are on the cutting edge of scientific and technological advances, and detectives are experts in behavioral analysis. The list goes on, showing that policing is not merely a career, it's a calling, a way of making a difference. We all rely on those who are first to arrive on the scene. We depend on police officers who act quickly and valiantly when we are put in danger that we would never have anticipated. And today we recall the unimaginable events of April 23rd, just a few days ago. While Torontonians grieve those taken from us and support the wounded, we also witnessed the very best of our diverse and inclusive community and city. We can take some comfort in the extraordinary response of our police officers. Toronto Police Constable Ken Lamb has been rightly praised for his courage, his calmness under pressure, and his measured, effective actions in bringing the threat and violence to an end. As with other officers and other first responders who have ably, so ably, reacted to extraordinary circumstances, Constable Lamb has said, "I was just doing my job." And yes, that's true. Facing danger and helping to pull others out of it is part of the job. But it's so much more than we ask from most of our citizens. So on behalf of the people of Ontario, I wish to convey my deep gratitude to Constable Lamb and to all members of the Toronto Police Service, led by Chief Mark Saunders, for such extraordinary professionalism, dedication, and compassion displayed during this dreadful incident and its aftermath. By serving and protecting us, not just on this day, but every day, police officers everywhere play such a crucial role in ensuring we live in a society that can be safe, secure, and resilient, and that despite our challenges, we remain cohesive. Ontarians stand united in healing. We will not be bowed or broken, and your presence gives us confidence. By your fine example, may you continue to encourage us all to be kind and generous as we build just communities, to be the best that we can be. Au nom de la Reine, as Her Majesty's representative, I offer you a most sincere thank you on behalf of a grateful province. Merci, miigwech.
Thank you, Your Honor. It is now my privilege to introduce and call upon Kathleen Wynne, Premier of the Province of Ontario.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour, bonjour, Annie. Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much, Your Honor. Madame la Ministre, it's a great honor to be here with all of you, members of police services from across Ontario, all over Canada, the United States, and Europe. Thank you so much for being here, but especially friends and families of loved ones. It is an honor to be here with you to remember the fallen, to mourn with their loved ones, and to show our gratitude for everyone who puts their life on the line to keep us safe. Thank you all for being here. For almost 20 years, on the first Sunday of May, we have come together to pay tribute to those officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Some years, with great sorrow, we add to this wall the name of an officer who we have just lost. But in 2017, not one officer fell in the line of duty in Ontario. This is truly a blessing, and we're very grateful. But we will always gather here because there are 266 men and women who have lost their lives. And time does not diminish the enormity of their sacrifice or the tragedy of a life cut short. Constable Smythe and Highway Traffic Officer Wilson were only in their 20s when they were killed nearly a century ago. We add their names to the wall today because every name inscribed in granite behind me is a powerful reminder that police work comes at a cost, that the safety and security and opportunities that we are granted in our law-abiding and democratic society do not come free. They are earned by the sacrifices of every man and every woman who puts on a uniform and knowingly puts themselves in harm's way. Notre société repose sur la bravoure des membres de nos forces policières, ainsi que sur leur sacrifice quotidien. Nous vous sommes éternellement reconnaissants pour votre service. I want to thank every police officer here today for that courage, for that commitment, and that sacrifice. Just like every name on this monument, you are heroes in life. There's perhaps no greater example of this than the police response to the recent tragedy at Yonge and Finch that Her Honor spoke of. In the face of unimaginable horror, members of the Toronto Police Services responded with strength, with skill and dignity. People around the world have seen the video of Constable Ken Lamb single-handedly apprehending the suspect without firing a single shot. His courage in the face of imminent danger is the very thing we honor with this memorial, the same selfless heroism that took these 266 lives. When I called Constable Lamb to tell him how proud we all are of him, he told me, "It's a great team." He talked about his team. That such bravery is shrouded in such humility, I think speaks volumes about those who take the oath to serve and protect. On a day that shook us to our core and had people questioning their own sense of safety, the calm professionalism of Toronto's finest reassured us. You made us feel safe. You reminded us that we are strong. You reminded us that we will heal. So again, I want to thank all of the police officers here today. Thank you for your selflessness. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your service. And to the families, thank you for your sacrifices. Thank you to the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation for ensuring that the stories of all our fallen heroes live on. Merci, miigwech. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Premier. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ontario Police Chorus. Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony of remembrance continues with the laying of the wreaths at the base of the memorial by our honored dignitaries and guests who will be escorted by our honor guard. On behalf of the people of Ontario, the Honorable Elizabeth Dodswell, Lieutenant Governor. On behalf of the Government of Ontario, the Honourable Kathleen Wynne, Premier. On behalf of the members of the Ontario Police Services and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Sergeant Kathy McCormick, Ontario Provincial Police Highway Safety Division. On behalf of the police officers of the United States of America, Detective Michael Catlin of the New York Police Department and Brian Goldstein of the FBI. On behalf of the families, Aaron Ochakovsky and Shelley Atkinson. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and join us in the act of remembrance. This will consist of the last post, a moment of silence, the lament, a volley of fire, and the reveille.
Rain! Rain at 10! Colors to the carry. Shoulder! Arms! General salute. Please and arms. General salute. Present. Arms. Shoulder. Arms.
We will now call upon Rabbi Ronald Weiss to deliver the benediction.
Almighty God, we lift our hearts up to you as we recall with tenderness, respect, and gratitude our departed fellow officers who gave their lives so that we may live in security. Grant peace of mind to those in our midst who bear deep wounds in their hearts today. May consolation come to them soon. May they find comfort in knowing that death is the wish of some, the relief of many, and the end of all. It places all human beings on the same level. Death separates, but it also unites. It reunites those whom it separates. May the memory of our departed fellow officers inspire us to live nobly and charitably, and to be cheerful with those who surround us. O Lord, let us all find sustaining hope in Thee, who has been our source of strength and comfort throughout the ages. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the royal anthem.
General salute. Present. Arms. Shoulder. Arms.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for your attendance today, for your part in making this ceremony of remembrance a fitting tribute to the lives of those heroes who lived and died and continue to live on in our hearts and our memories. Heroes in life, not death. On behalf of the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation, the officers on parade, and all of the family and friends here today, I would like to acknowledge and thank the Lieutenant Governor, the Premier, and the Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services for their attendance and continued support of this event. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand. As the parade prepares, to march past, I would ask our guests to remain at their seats. Upon completion of today's ceremony, I would like to invite everyone for refreshments and food, which will be served on the other side of the memorial site. I now wish to invite the Honorable Elizabeth Dodswell, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, and the official party to be escorted by the Honor Guard to receive the salute and march past.
RCMP, Canadian Forces, and OPP stand fast. Parade, move to the right en masse. Right! Turn! Parade will reform southbound on Queen's Park Crescent by the right. Quick march!
At this time, I wish to invite families to join in the viewing of the march past.
One great family, living in peace and
CMP leading. By the right wheel, quick march!
This is a ceremony steeped in tradition and respect to honor those police officers killed in the line of duty. Doug, 266 names on that memorial wall. We've heard about how important it is for today's officers to be at this ceremony every year. Give me your perspective.
Well, it's an opportunity to remember officers. For me, it was an opportunity to remember there was 5 officers on the wall that I known and worked with, and certainly take that opportunity to pay my respects to them and the other officers that are on that wall that did give their lives in the line of duty. It was a ceremony. The Police Memorial Foundation did an excellent job. Again, we had the Ryan Russell Police Pipe and Drum Band. Ryan Russell was a sergeant with the Toronto Police Service and was struck down by a man that stole a truck in the early morning hours, not in the morning hours, and was run over and subsequently died. And he left a legacy to have this pipe band in his honor. We also had the last post done by the London Police Service, Jordan McIntosh, and who'd done an excellent job as well. The tradition of pipes at a ceremony of remembrance is quite unique. It goes back to the Irish and during the potato famine came over to North America, and they used the pipes over home and brought it over here to mourn someone's death. And they used the Scottish bagpipes rather than the Irish bagpipes because they're a much stronger instrument, and it was a way of many of the Irish had men and women came over, did go to the fire department and police departments, and that's how became a tradition to have the pipes at these ceremonial funerals.
So the ceremony has just ended, and now a very impressive parade of all the police forces that are here today.
Yes, it started off with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in their red serge uniforms, and now follows along. At the side of the curb you see here is Premier Kathleen Wynne, along with the Lieutenant Governor. They're taking the salute as each individual police service march past, and the chief, usually the chief or the head of the unit, will give the salute to the Lieutenant Governor and the Premier. What we're seeing here is the Hamilton Police Service coming past.
Police services from all across Ontario and into the States actually represented, you said.
Yes. There is not a full unit from the United States, but there is officers here from the United States that come down and pay their respect. So what we have is the mass band playing, mass pipe and drum band playing as the procession goes past for the salute. And this is all taking place at Queen's Park Crescent in the southwest corner of the Parliament buildings, just outside the park where we just had the ceremony. As you can see in this picture, all the wreaths, and there's a picture of the mass bands of all the police services that have pipe bands. There's many of them there, providing the music for the march past. now playing Scotland the Brave.
Doug, why do you feel it's important for officers to attend this event?
It shows respect for their fellow officers who do the same job or did the same job as them and had the unfortunate mishap of being killed in the line of duty. It's a way to remember their fallen officers, and it's a matter of respect for the fallen as well.
And it's not just officers and family members and friends of those fallen in the line of duty that attend this ceremony. It never ceases to amaze me how many people just walk in off the street and stop and pay their respect.
There are people that do come past the ceremony. There's families that attend as well. And it's important to the families, and certainly being able to watch this event on TV for the more elderly widowers and widows. It's an opportunity, rather than traveling to Toronto, to actually have that time to remember their loved one and see the ceremony that remembers their father or mother.
And why is this ceremony at the beginning of May, the first Sunday in May?
The ceremony coincides with the beginning of Police Week in Ontario. It's all through the week. There will be open houses at police services right across the province, where people will be able to go in on certain days and visit the police or have barbecues out front just to meet their local police officers. And this is a way of including this ceremony as part of that Police Week. There's Chief Brian Larkin with the Waterloo Police Service marching class right now. And there's a picture of one of the wreaths. The wreaths are done up very nicely. The families will have an opportunity after the ceremony to pick up a flower and lay that flower at the memorial on the ground underneath their loved one's name that's on the granite walls. Some of the younger ones will also trace the name of their father, uncle, grandfather on a piece of paper by just shading it on the wall.
Traditionally, how many people attend this ceremony, Doug? Is there an average, on average?
On average, there's about 400 to 500 people that attend the service. Families, police officers, the different other law enforcement agencies in the province come down. And afterwards, they'll be invited to a barbecue hosted by the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation before they start their journey home to different parts of the province.
Great marshals, to the right, salute!
And here is the mass band. Always thrilling for me when you see a large group of pipers parading on in full dress. There's Dave Brown with the mace, who we interviewed earlier.
The man who researches, the man who is our historian and researches
Yes.
all their stories.
Yes.
And knows them like the back of his hand.
And he also does the band
Yes.
in his retirement as well.
In his retirement. He's a busy man.
And here you see the motorcycles from across the province. Ontario Provincial Police leading forward. Durham Regional Police, white motorcycles there.
Typically the end of our procession.
The rumble of these motorcycles going past is always a thrilling experience. And the skills that these officers have driving the motorcycles and at a slow speed and keeping them in fairly good straight line. It's a heavy motorcycle to maneuver with.
You are watching the 19th Annual Ontario Police Memorial Foundation Ceremony of Remembrance.
Now we're seeing the bikes from the Toronto Police Service coming past. At the back of the parade. And we'll also see behind them the police mounted horse units from various police services in the province. Right now you're looking at the motorcycle procession. Again, these motorcycles are very well lit as compared to what they were in the 80s and 90s. They're very visible, and that's important when you're working as a police officer on the street. You want to be highly visible. There's one officer there that's even got yellow, reflective yellow on his coat. And here we have the mounted horse unit. These horses do come in handy when controlling crowds, searching parks for missing persons, and getting into areas where a car or motorcycle simply can't go.
Okay. You have been watching the 19th Annual Ontario Police Memorial Foundation Ceremony of Remembrance. Doug, thanks again
Thank
for
you.
joining us, and thanks to you for watching.